In this tutorial, we are going to uh, learn how to install Tomcat. Tomcat is basically an application server which is used to serve HTML to browsers and other clients. These HTMLs can be created in a static fashion or created dynamically. Uh, we are going to learn more about that in detail later. Before we install Tomcat, let's just have a basic crash course of HTML. So here, let me create a HTML file. So I'll just say test.html, and so basic HTML will be something like this: HTML, and then body, and then say test HTML, and that's it. So we can open it up using the browser, and there you go. So HTML stands for hypertext markup language, um, and basically it's nothing but an XML. An XML is extended markup language, but HTML contains some special XML tags which tells a browser how to render text, videos, animations, uh, how to create links, etc. So everything that you see online on a browser is basically HTML. So if I right click over here and say inspect or even view page source, what you see is all HTML. So let's download Tomcat. We're going to download Tomcat 9. You can find instructions for Linux online. I'm going to do this for Windows. Okay, so I have it here. It's taking some time to join the bits, it seems. Well, I have, yeah, it's here. Okay, so we'll run it. This is taking a bit more time than I had expected. Alright, there you go. So we'll just go with all the defaults. Pay special attention to this, which is HTTP connector port 8080. When you go online, uh, you don't specify a port, but basically you can do something like 80. Um, and 80 is like a default port when you're browsing to any website. Port 443 is a default port for SSL. Uh, but since Tomcat is running locally on your machine, Tomcat provides a default port of 8080, and it also has an administrator panel. So I'll just go to add some username and password to access that admin panel. Tomcat automatically detects the Java program that's installed on your machine. So have Java pre-installed, and I usually get it installed in the D drive so that it's easy for me to find and make modifications to it. And there you go. So by default, this is installing Tomcat as a service, which means when my machine starts or restarts, Tomcat program starts running in the background. So once it's running, I can go to localhost colon 8080, and there you go. I have my Tomcat, and I can go into my manager app and see all the applications that are installed. So even this is all HTML, this page, uh, the one before here. So where is it all coming from? So inside Tomcat, uh, you have multiple folders. And one of the most important ones is web apps, which stands for web applications. So when I type localhost 8080, Tomcat is serving me all the content from inside the root folder. Uh, and if I go into the manager app, you see uh, the path has a slash manager, and such uh, paths are called basically context paths. Uh, and so if I don't give any context path, then a default context path is chosen, which is the root. Otherwise, whatever context path you gave, that one is chosen. So let's create a new application, employee, and in here I'll just copy my test.html, right? And so now if I do slash employee, here's my context path for the employee application, and inside that test.html, and I see my test.html over here. Let's make some modification to this test.html. Let's say I enclose this text in a heading tag, and we'll just refresh it, and you can see that now the text is displayed in the heading format, which is basically a larger and bolder font. So if you see over here, if I do slash employee, I get nothing. That's because I've not told Tomcat which HTML file to serve, and in that case Tomcat by default looks for a file called index.html. So let's just create this, and I'll just write index.html, and I'll refresh it, and I see my index.html over here. And we can also add a link to our test.html. Okay, and if I now refresh this, I see the link, and if I click on it, I go to the test.html. So this is how you can create HTML files and serve it using Tomcat, and link the files together to create a website. And this is really the basics of the web world. So Tomcat basically works both as a web server and an application server. The difference between the two is that web server is serving static HTML and other static resources like images, etc. But often static resources are not that useful. You want to interact with the web server, and so you need to have programs that you can run which can dynamically create the HTML. And the way to do that in Tomcat is by creating something called JSPs. I'm going to create something called test.jsp. JSP stands for Java Server Pages. And what JSPs allow you to do is to embed Java code inside your JSP files. And then Tomcat can interpret this JSP and execute that Java code, and we'll see how it does that in a minute. So I'm just embedding some Java code within these two special character sequences. So I can now do something like string name equal to request.get parameter name, and then I can say hello name, and this character sequence over here is just telling JSP to write name in the HTML, and the name is to be obtained from request parameter, so we'll also see what it means. So now let's say I just do test.jsp and I say I get hello null, which is because I haven't passed it any name yet. And so the way to pass it name is I can say name equal to, let's say, Romiljan, and I say Romiljan over here. So how is Tomcat running this? Because this is uh, in the first look not really anything like a program. So since Tomcat knows this is a JSP file from its extension, it will convert this file into a real Java code. So you can find it over work, Catalina, localhost, employee, and now the package name starts org Apache JSP, and here you see test JSP Java. So Tomcat has automatically converted my JSP file into a full-blown Java code, and here you see all our all our JSP code is here. So my HTML is here, and then the statement that I wrote, string name equal to request.get parameter, is right over here, and then finally it's writing hello, and then this variable name is being written on the output stream, sort of. So what's happening here is that Tomcat creates this Java file and then compiles into Java class, and whenever it returns a request, it receives a request for the JSP file. Mhm. it it actually ends up executing this class, which then dynamically creates your HTML and sends it back to the browser. So such classes are called servlets. Why? Because these are small programs creating dynamic HTML on behalf of the server. So that's why servlet. Um, you can either create servlets by writing your JSPs, uh, or you can actually write this entire Java program manually. Also, you will not need to do so much complex coding when you're creating servlets. There's an easier way, easier set of interfaces given to do all of that. Um, and GSP is something which is GSP servlets are something which are roughly a more than a decade old technology. They're still in use at many places. However, these have been replaced by more modern frameworks like Spring, and we're going to learn them in future tutorials. You can read about GSPs online. You can read about creating servlets online. We're going to briefly cover servlet in one of our future tutorials as well. Um, yeah, and for fun, let us see if we can add some images. So let's go to the tutorials. All right, I'm just going to copy this logo inside my web apps folder and resize it. All right, I'll save it as logo, and inside our JSP I can add an image tag. There you go. And now if I just refresh this entire thing, I see the logo also over here. And if I change the name to Inkref, I see the name getting changed also. Finally, let's have a look at the Tomcat directory structure. We have seen web apps, we have seen work, where all the JSPs get converted into Java files and then finally executable compiled classes. In addition to this, Tomcat has the logs folder, so if something goes wrong, you can view the logs. Then there is the conf folder. Uh, One of the important files is server.xml. Uh, if you see over here, there are various definitions like which port Tomcat should be listening on. And if you want to configure your SSL, you can also do it via this file. Again, I'll not cover all of this. All that all this can be read online and learned from there. Then there is a bin folder, and you have scripts to start and shut down Tomcat. And the Tomcat service running over here basically just invokes these scripts to do the same. And finally, Tomcat itself is a Java program. Uh, and so these are all the libraries that is used by Tomcat to run. So essentially, Tomcat is a Java program that serves as a web server to serve static files like images, JavaScripts, cascading style sheets, and HTML files, as well as it serves as an application server. Um, and hence the name web apps for this directory, which is web applications. And Tomcat can basically run servlets or JSPs to serve dynamic HTML content. Okay, thank you.